You want us to dress only for school according to the dress code, but no way. I'll wear whatever I want. A little backstory for context. I'm not a fan of dress codes for the sake of dress codes. So, when I went to boarding school, I was absolutely thrilled to go to a school that didn't have a uniform at all. Okay, I don't actually have a problem with dress codes per se. I have a problem with how the rules are interpreted. If it says socks have to be black or blue, 99.999 minus 99 of people are going to think they mean dark blue. And I'm the kind of person who would show up in sky blue just to stand out for the day, just to share a smirk with 5 other people who would think, but it just said blue, just to show the bureaucrat who wrote the rules that they're not so impenetrable. In short, I'm, as my husband would say, a real pain in the ass. I just love showing people that one or the other isn't always the only option. Let's just say I've always dressed boldly and loved unusual combinations. And if I'd had support and been taught how to sew, I probably would have become a fashion designer. I wanted to experiment with colors and textures, but boarding school wasn't exactly a bright place. Although I was a smart child, I was never a rule breaker. My mother always said, "The author is an obedient and well-behaved girl. She can bend the rules into pretzels, but she'll never break them on purpose." My mother had to be very careful in formulating rules and restrictions when she left me alone. But she also had to be careful not to give me ideas. Basically, if someone gives me the impression that a rule is immutable, I'll definitely want to check whether it's true. But if you're an idiot, I'll find the most sophisticated way to show you that it's not immutable. My mother was a firm believer. Critical thinking is the key to success in life. If you can assess a problem and find a way to solve it, then you don't need to know everything. You just need to know how to find the answers. Keep in mind, this was about a decade before Google and smartphones, so I don't blame modern parents for having a different mentality, but I still believe I would raise my children the same way if I had any. So I was raised to believe that the people who succeed in life aren't the ones who just say apple when asked what that red, round thing on the table is. You pick it up, turn it over, notice the feel and the weight, memorize the smell and the reflection on the wax, and commit it to memory. You never know when someone will ask you what the bottom of an apple looks like, when there are no apples to look at, right? So, if you live by this principle, mentally turning every problem inside out, doing the same with school rules becomes pretty funny. And now the story itself. I went to boarding school and we had 2 types of dress codes. The first was called class dress code, and it was exactly what the name implies. We were expected to look like young professionals. It was a very basic dress code. Girls wore skirts no higher than fingertips, and boys wore shirts and TIs. The rules were pretty detailed, as they usually are. The second type of clothing was what we were allowed to wear in our free time. It was called urban style. It had to be followed when we were somewhere off school grounds or just hanging out in the student lounge. This dress code was more relaxed, but there were still restrictions so that girls couldn't wear anything too revealing, and boys couldn't wear torn or worn clothes. I had a pair of knee-high suede fringed boots, actually 2 pairs, black and brown. They were the most comfortable and warm boots I'd ever owned. Even before UGGs came along, my mum and I fought constantly over who could wear them, so it was a huge victory for me when she let me take them to school. Then one day, a teacher came up to me and said that the faculty council had discussed my boots and decided they weren't dress code for class. But I read the rules, I countered. They don't say anything about those kinds of boots. I know. We just decided they weren't dress code, she explained. But the color is fine. I know. And the fabric is fine. Suede is allowed. I know. The length of the boots is not specified anywhere, but they allow boots for horseback riding. I know. Then why? I'm honestly not sure if I felt anger or hurt or both, but my emotions were running high. I wish I could give you a good answer, she replied. It was a teacher I liked and who I knew treated me well. I immediately understood why she was the one sent to talk to me. I'm not the type to make a scene or raise a fuss. I'm the type who prefers to take revenge my way. Okay, I said, and left. That night, I studied the dress code rules inside and out. I read every sentence through and through. I said the rules out loud. I picked up every item of clothing mentioned in the rules and studied it as if I were an alien who only had these instructions and a piece of fabric to understand why people wear all this. I must admit, it was a strict charter, but they made 2 mistakes. First, For some reason, it didn't specify at all where each item of clothing should be worn, and not a word about at least trying to look well groomed. It said what color the clothes should be and where they should reach. Skirts below the toes, socks above the ankles, sleeves covering the elbows, and all that. Shoes had to be muted colors, black, brown, like my boots, or other earthy shades. But nowhere did it say that you can't come, for example, in elf shoes. Of course, such shoes would be out of keeping with the school dress code. I went to bed angry as hell, with a bunch of evil ideas racing through my head. I spent a long time debating whether I should even get involved in this. In the end, I decided that the morning is wiser than the evening. If the feeling didn't pass, I'd start the first stage. The next morning, I woke up just as angry, and on my way to breakfast, I mentally made a list of the most notorious blockheads in our class. When I got to the cafeteria, I found a couple of these kids and told them that the regulations clearly state that a tie must be tied with a knot. A Windsor knot, single or double. If it's a side tie, then the classic way. I don't know what it's called myself, but nowhere does it say what part of the body the tie should be worn on. They only ask to tie it correctly, but they don't say that it has to be around the neck. I advise them to reread everything themselves in the evening, and then they'll decide what to do with this information. The next day, ties were everywhere, on wrists, on glasses, on foreheads, on ankles, on knees, on thighs, wrapped around fists as if someone wanted to stop the bleeding. Basically, if a Windsor could be tied to any part of the body, there was always a boy in our school with a tie. There, I was damn pleased with myself. The first stage went great. The teachers were annoyed, but many just found it funny until it came to math class. There was a boy sitting without a tie, the same one who always wore a bow tie. The teacher walked up to him, looking down. I understand that you decided to have fun with TIs today. I think we have been patient enough, but if you know the rules so well, you probably remember that you are still supposed to wear a tie. He looked up, grinned and said, "I have a tie, you just can't see it," and there was an explosion of hot air in the class. Maybe he really did tie it around his ankles, under his pants, or under his jacket, around his elbow, I don't know. But for everyone, he remained the guy who supposedly came to class with a tie on his dick. By the end of the day, I was considered the legend for finding a loophole in the rules, and he was the legend for where he'd fitted it. The very next morning, a notification came through the school newsletter. The rules had been updated. Now it said that TIs were only allowed around the neck. The fun days for the boys were over. The second phase turned out to be much more difficult. I'd been eyeing the most ridiculous pair of shoes I'd ever seen at the mall for a while now. They were silver with holographic rainbow intertwining circles. They had a 5 centimeters platform and a massive 10 centimeters heel with laces. The length was just above the ankle. Unimaginable. I knew they weren't allowed to wear to class, but I really wanted to wear them out on the town. As I said, after 9 years in uniform, I was finally starting to enjoy fashion. I saved up for months and visited the boot store whenever I could. Gradually, I tried to convince myself that those stupid boots were too expensive. But after I was banned from wearing my favorite suede boots, the urge to buy them only grew stronger. And just now, I managed to scrape together the necessary amount. What luck! That weekend, I literally ran skipping to the store for my holographic rainbow boots, but they weren't in my size. I almost burst into tears, and then I noticed a black patent leather version next to them. Until now, they seemed kind of boring to me, especially compared to silver. Well, in the expense regulations, there was an entire paragraph dedicated to patent leather shoes. They were allowed, but only if you wore pants. There is an old idiotic opinion that patent leather shoes supposedly reflect a girl's panties if she's wearing a skirt. So, my rainbow boots were definitely off limits to class, but their sisters, black patent leather ones with silver accents, were officially allowed. Silver was allowed on shoes because, you see, shoes can have metal eyelets for laces, and even 5 centimeters platforms and 10 centimeters heels were allowed, by the way. The school didn't even have a heel height limit. Apparently, they figured high school girls wouldn't want to wear stilettos all day. Also, unlike the silver rainbow shoes, the black patent leather version looked more like fucking ankle boots than club-goer footwear. And to think I wouldn't have even glanced at those black shoes if it weren't for my newfound interest in dress codes. They were bright orange polyester pants with little grey-green amorphous spots, something like an incredibly tiny giraffe print. The green was almost impossible to see. All you could see was that there was some kind of pattern on the orange background. The two colors clashed so violently that the image literally vibrated before your eyes, causing a slight dizziness and nausea if you stared at it for too long. And by a lucky coincidence, I also snagged an orange terracloth sweater in the exact same shade. From above, I looked like a half-baked Sesame Street character, and from below, like a lost loser from the disc era. And did I mention, they were slightly flared orange polyester pants. On Monday, I walked into class looking like I'd been kicked off the set of Saturday Night Fever. My new platform boots had massive wooden heels that clacked so loudly you could hear them throughout the building. Now I towered over everyone by a full 10 centimeters, became even more noticeable in the hallways, and could rival some of the teachers in terms of imposing presence. I noticed some of them casting sidelong glances at my new boots, and I started trying to figure out which teachers weren't happy with my knee-high suede boots. I could tell right away which teachers found my appearance ridiculous. But I didn't stop there. It became my life's mission to choose the most hideous outfits I could imagine. I didn't care what I looked like anymore. I carefully chose my clothes to make sure my wardrobe met the dress code. And the teachers themselves admitted that my boots did meet the requirements. They just didn't like them. I'd gone to great lengths to follow their rules, and they suddenly decided that wasn't enough just because they didn't like something. So now I wore ugly boots every single day, so they had to look at outfits that no one else liked. Every damn day. Well, what could they do? They tell me every day that I'm dressed improperly, but they can't explain why. According to them, my clothes didn't violate any rules, and I had no intention of breaking them. It's not my style. A good thing about boarding school life was that girls happily swapped clothes with anyone who was willing to share. So I had not one closet, but 30, and that's just in our block. Of course, my clothes initially all coordinated. I carefully selected everything in advance, but paired with other people's clothes, my clothes looked simply ridiculous. For example, my neighbor had a loud, bright shirt that she only wore with a black skirt. I, however, paired it with a skirt from a girl in the other room with some wild print, specifically so that the colors clashed as much as possible. Still, the dress code was not violated. I only wore my slutty boots with pants. I scoured every thrift store, vintage shop, and second-hand store in town, and there were plenty of them. The city was full of hippies, so the choice was excellent. I collected 3-piece suits and TIs, which made me look so tomboyish that at a parent-teacher conference, the teachers actually asked my mother if I was nuts. Apparently, dressing badly meant being a lesbian. I braided my bangs into a thin braid, hung a heavy earring on the end of it so it hung down, and swung it over my desk or a book, turning my head, but only in class. I was glaring at the teachers I suspected of discriminating against my boots. I did everything I could to irritate everyone with my appearance. At that very parent-teacher conference, the teachers asked my mother to talk to me about my clothes, and she asked in surprise if I was breaking any rules. They explained to her about the boots. Mum laughed and said there was nothing she could do about it. If there's one thing my daughter hates, it's being punished for a rule she didn't know about or that never existed. You want to impose rules now to stop her? Tomorrow she won't do it anymore. I assure you. You won't see those boots again, but you took away something she loved. And in her eyes, you did it for no reason. For her, it's a punishment, even if you thought it was just a request. And now she's punishing you in return. It's simple. I advise you to let it go and rewrite your rules over the summer, otherwise you'll run out of paper typing up edits every day to keep up with the loopholes she finds. My daughter loves finding loopholes in the rules. I shouldn't have given her so many puzzles as a child. Upon hearing this, the teachers admitted that the only reason my new boots were ignored was this. Seeing my reaction to the ban on suede boots, some teachers were afraid to imagine what else I might retaliate with if they banned the second pair too. And I, being a perfectly obedient student, never wore my suede boots again. I was never picked on about my clothes again, except maybe once, when my skirt turned out to be too short, and to be honest, it wasn't intentional. I didn't go back to that school the following year, but for completely different reasons. So I don't know if they made any changes. I still have the black boots after all these years, and I smile every time I stumble across them at the bottom of some box. I also have a t-shirt from that time. It's literally the ugliest thing in my wardrobe, and I can't bring myself to throw it away because every time I come across it in the closet, I remember that story and laugh. And there are also photos of me in my orange fuzzy outfit somewhere. If I ever find it, I'll definitely share it. How much fun I had making them back then. The dress code will solve that. So, my advice, approach your problems creatively, look at them from a different angle. Turn them inside out, try a little differently, and who knows what cracks you'll find there. And also, this is just another great story about what an amazing mother I had. She was always ready to support me. Although, if you think about it, I suspect that she herself was angry that they didn't like our boots. After all, if everything was clearly written in the school rules, she could have worn them herself all this time, but instead, such cool boots were just gathering dust in my school locker. I miss you, Mum. Edited. No, I did not become a lawyer. It just happened that way. Now I work for myself, starting a business in a field that I am truly passionate about, and I enjoy almost every minute of it. Work? I am happy and grateful that I love what I do. One more clarification. This story happened in the mid-90s. Well, that's all. I would like you to write in the comments how you broke any rules in your schools or universities, colleges, or if they were impossible to break. I would like to know why. It would be interesting to read. And for now, that's all. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. Check out our previous videos, which you can find here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and good luck.